Hello, and welcome to Meeting in the Sacred, a podcast where each week we invite you into diverse conversations about physical, emotional, and spiritual well being in the pursuit of wholeness. My name is Danielle Chandler. I'm a Christ Path mystic and wholeness coach.
And my name is Teresa Noach. I'm an interspiritual enthusiast and published author with an eclectic Christian background. And no matter where you are in life, if you're curiously seeking, deconstructing, reconstructing, struggling in your faith, or just feeling lost, you are welcome here.
Here we are with episode 12, Finding Meaning and Joy Through the Holidays. Yes, last week we discussed different approaches on how we can apply core values, and today we are going to talk about boundaries and how to find
Ooh.
joy and meaning through the holidays with boundaries.
Okay, that's a good one. That's a really good
Yeah.
one. Get us in there.
Yeah. So the beautiful thing about boundaries is that they help us stay connected to our authentic selves, that we are able to sit with them and our core values and to be able to become more self-aware of what truly is important to us, and we get to unpack and learn more about our needs and our limits as well as values. They really are an empowerment agent, I feel like, and it helps us to minimize in relationships, I feel, um, to reduce anger and resentment and feelings of burnout. And last week, I gave some examples, and you gave some examples about our personal core values. So today I thought we could kind of reflect upon those in addition to talking about some of our boundaries and how our boundaries support those core values.
Yeah.
So last week I shared that three of my core values are integrity, honor, and authenticity. I wrote just a little something around them to kind of help uh, maybe inspire people to figure out, what a core value might be to them and how to
Right.
attach a sentence or a phrase to it. So for integrity, I choose to be honest with myself, to live from the inside out, reflecting what I believe on the inside through my actions, behaviors, choices, and how I do relationships. For honor, I will do anything I can to protect this heart to heart connection. And authenticity, I desire to be genuine no matter what the cost. Obviously, these sentences play out differently in what they mean and represent in life.
Yeah,
In
no
every
matter what the cost.
situation.
Can you say that last one again? I mean, no matter
Sure.
what the cost is huge, so I want to
I
hear that one
know.
again.
I desire to be genuine no matter what the cost. I find
Genuine. Okay. And are you using genuine synonymous with authentic?
uh yeah. So like I find with boundaries, they aren't walls. Boundaries really show up differently in each relationship and each situation that we're in. But these kind of sentences that we put with our core values are these phrases. It kind of is, something that helps us to sit with and to ask ourselves questions about, okay, how am I going to make a choice right now? Or how do I really feel about this thing that's happening right now? Does this align to, these phrases? This is just kind of more black and white.
Oh,
But
I was going to say, because if you could, I would love to know, like, if I mean, if that was just an example, cool. But no matter what the cost, I was like, oh snap. Okay, well, what does that translate
I can
to?
give an
Like,
example.
yeah, what's an example of the
Yeah.
cost? I want an example of the cost because you're saying no matter the cost. So tell me what an example of the cost might be. I'm so
Yeah.
curious.
Well, I think for myself, as I reflect upon that question, no matter what the cost for me has been, walking away from friendships in the past or walking away from certain lifestyle choices that I was making specifically, that when I looked at how I wanted to be integrous, because what I've noticed, just like with the core values that we were talking about last week, they all really kind of weave in together. And so when I think about integrity alongside of authenticity for myself, I have found that they almost play a role in supporting one another.
Yeah.
So, if I was like evolving or growing or healing, changing certain beliefs, or just realizing, hey, this thing that I thought was once working for me really isn't working for me anymore, and I might have to actually step away from doing some things with my friends that we once used to do, and how are they going to take that, and are they going to get mad? Are they going to try to manipulate me and control me because they are experiencing a fear response? And that's actually something that I process through, because during those moments of my life, I felt really insecure. I know I've shared in the past episodes about dealing with, feeling unaccepted and rejected, and how that
Right.
really did play a role into my life and the voice of that. So feeling unaccepted or rejected, and how voices from those tapes of the past started to try to, you know, take me away from being authentic, or
Yeah.
moving into the authenticity that I really wanted to be in, which ultimately, as I was sharing how boundaries help kind of minimize or prevent feelings of resentment or anger, I did find that when I wasn't being authentic, then I would get really angry, because I would feel that I was letting um, that that tape of rejection, or the tapes of wanting to feel accepted, dictate my life over what I truly wanted, and I would really sabotage myself in certain ways because I had so badly wanted to feel accepted.
So would you be
Um,
mad at yourself then? Would you be resentful and angry towards yourself for not, you know, would you beat yourself up
yeah,
over it?
for
Yeah.
sure. And then
Yeah.
more negative self talk would pop up.
Right.
Like, I
Right.
would talk down to myself and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you effing did that again, you idiot, or
So
like,
I'm sure you've heard the I don't know if you know who Abraham or Esther Hicks is. Um, but I heard her say, and I don't know where her resource is from, but I know I've heard it somewhere else before as well, that it takes between 16 and 17 seconds of thinking one thought to attract another thought like it.
mm,
I mean, that's intense. And she said if you within that 16 seconds of thinking that desirable thought, say you're at 12 seconds and suddenly you're like, oh, you're having that resentful thought or that like self-loathing thought or that self-shaming thought. It's like you have to start all over again, because every single thought that we give 16 to 17 seconds of, we attract another one similar to it. And then once we spend 1 minute in that vibrational thought, we actually we get traction and then momentum. And so it does take practice
mm,
to hold those thoughts. And I'll give a quick example. This will tie into the boundaries and everything, because it has a lot to do with what we're telling ourselves. It has a lot to do with whether or not what we're telling ourselves is in alignment with our actions, and
mm-hmm,
how
yeah,
we can sync those up. But I was practicing this uh, type of mind exercise when I was walking yesterday, and I was listening to Esther Hicks, and I was like, "Oh, that's really cool. That's right. I remember that. So okay, I'm going to practice it now, even while I'm listening to her." And I was like, "What can I think about that's just simple and good?"
mm-hmm,
And I looked down, and I'm like, "I can walk, and the ground is there." it's supporting me, and my feet are just moving, and
Hmm.
my body is just doing this, and I don't have to tell it to do this. And I started to focus on every single step I was taking and how it felt. I mean, that's also mindfulness, but how it felt to experience the vibration of my foot hitting the earth every time like I took another step. And I was like, I'm going to keep this thought here on how good it feels to be supported by this ground that I'm walking on, and how good it feels to have this vibration going through my body, my cells and everything. How good. And I did that for a while, and then I would notice all of a sudden like the cars are driving by, and I would remember that there have been times where I just want to go on a nice walk and not have traffic.
Hmm.
And I'll be a little resentful for humans in that moment. And I'm enjoying the ground that I'm walking on, and I'm having all these lovely thoughts, and then cars start driving by, and I have this resent for humans at a moment
Hmm.
in a moment. And then I said to myself, well, how can I change, how can I rescript that, right? So, you know what? I'm thankful that these people have transportation to get to the grocery store to feed their family today, because who knows, like, let's be totally selfish. Maybe one of them is the husband of the school teacher that's teaching my son today, right? And so he's able to drive to the store, go to his doctor's appointment, or maybe that lady down the road is on her way to the hospital to have her baby. So I started thinking about how it was such a blessing that people were able to drive, as opposed to
Hmm.
my brain going sideways and taking control and telling me how inconvenienced I was by the fact that there were people driving. But when you're talking about um, you know getting to that place where not having your boundaries would cause your thoughts to go sideways, and it just
Hmm.
made me remember that like those thoughts can go sideways so quick, and then they begin to attract more thoughts like it, which also takes us out of alignment with our authenticity and our integrity,
Hmm.
which takes us out of alignment with our boundaries. So
Yeah, I think that's a really good example that does highlight that we do have a core self, and that our feelings and emotions, they aren't a defining factor of who we are or our reality, and when you think
right.
about trauma, um, that also I think is connected to that, because when we have trauma, for instance, we can go into black and white thinking or go into all these cognitive distortions. And then we can create a lifestyle out of that, not realizing, oh, there is this core self inside of us that does want to help elevate our being into wholeness and healing and transformation. And like you said, our brains, if we allow ourselves to kind of go down these paths, they can really become like an undertow, that distorts the perception of what we could be experiencing. Like you were able to transition into a more positive mindset, or shift your perspective to what does hope or peace look like for me right now in this moment. But there was something that rose up within you that chose to want to identify that. And these practices that you were saying, even listening to the podcast or recording that you were listening to, you know, being right there in that moment and applying this stuff. I mean, people that are listening to us right now could literally be like taking notes and unpacking what we're talking about, to, have that mind body connection, to take this information into their being, like food, spiritual food, soul food,
Mm.
however you want to look at it, and let there be a rewiring that starts to happen. Like right now, I'm doing hypnobirthing for uh, when I deliver
Nice,
in
nice.
January or February, who knows?
Oh, that's so
And
exciting.
it's you are you are wiring yourself so that when you are in these intense, uncomfortable moments, that you can go back and revisit what you've already experienced in a state of peace and calm, and to tap into that to help bring yourself into that state of rest. So um, the the example that I was giving of this, negative self-talk that I had when I started to like beat myself up about certain choices I was making to not align to my authenticity. I had actually heard somebody say, would you talk to your friends the way that you're talking to yourself? Or would you talk to somebody else the way that you were talking to yourself? And something
Right.
happened to me when I heard that in that moment, that it was like that was written on my heart. There was
Yeah.
something that penetrated so deeply in my soul and spirit of a message of truth that I wanted to take that as treasure with me. And
Yeah.
it was wired in me. So when I, was experiencing these experience I was going to say
Yeah.
opportunities, these opportunities where I could beat myself up, I actually was reminded of that person saying, would you talk to your friend this way? And it made me reflect upon how can I really love myself right now, and what would I say to a friend that is going through what I'm going through, and like how could I show myself compassion? How could I show myself the things that I would show someone else?
Right.
Maybe I need to hug myself.
Yeah. No, you know what? I hear that too. I mean, I
Yeah.
actually have heard that, you know, this week. I don't even remember exactly what it was. I'd totally freely share it if I could remember it. But, this week, the perfectionism streak has been in full ramp, like ramped up,
Hmm.
and I was starting to beat myself up over that
Hmm.
because I got into some burnout and I know better. Do I? I know better. And I did, like, literally all week long, as I was pushing myself as hard as I was to get everything I want to be, and then the list is never done. It just kept being more. And I have goals in mind. I know where I'm going,
Hmm.
but I'm a mom. We have a home. I don't have a housekeeper. We have pets. And I don't feel as if I function optimally if things are out of sorts. And so, with my goals in mind for the new year, my personal goals and business goals that I'm really excited about, they're the why that they were the why. They were the reason I pushed the crap out of myself. And then when my body was like, what the heck do you think you are doing? Like, you have physical limitations and I am trying to support you right now, but you are
Hmm.
making it hard. My body's like, you're making it hard for me to support you right now. And I'm really trying, And so I got into that, like, kind of beating myself up over like, um, how did I slip into this perfectionist mode? I've dealt with that a long time ago in therapy. How am I here right now? Well, I'll tell you some of it because you guys always know I go back to astrology. But and so right now we're having the Sun conjunct Mars in Scorpio between the 16th and the 18th, and so this is going to air later, but it's currently November 16th, 17th, right? 17th. So
I'm like, don't ask me. Yeah, it is.
so it's the Sun conjunct Mars in Scorpio between the 16th and the 18th. I have it on my whiteboard. That's what I'm looking at because it's that important to me. Actually, I wrote it down because it's very monumental energy. And so when I start experiencing some of these things that are coming up, um, it's really profound. And yesterday when I was walking and I was listening to um, uh, Esther Hicks, um, I had listened to her before I put on the astro weather forecast for this week from one of my favorite astrologers. And so I was totally in this, like, Esther Hicks had me in this, like, everything is beautiful, everything's lovely, positive mind, practicing positive thoughts that feel good, thoughts that attract another feel good thought. And so I'm practicing that. And then I'm like, well, her video was over. So I put on the astrology video and it was like, shadow work, shadow work, shadow work, Scorpio. those deep hidden things are coming up right now. It's the last week of Scorpio. And so those things that we have one chance, we have another chance to work on it right now. And the astro weather is going to make sure that we see all those hidden things, and, the things that we think are ugly, the things that we talk ourselves down about, the things that like we were just talking about a minute ago, that we shame ourselves for, or that we get angry with ourselves for. Those are the things that need to come up right now, so that we can have, which there's a positive to this, because it can be very painful, because when these types of astrological movements are happening, these are not very subtle. They're not subtle in any way. These are the types of, like, really intense, oh my God, is this really a part of who I am? I'm not even sharing, I'm not divulging all of some of the stuff that the universe has been showing me this week, because I'm still integrating it all. But at the end of it, there is a bust through. Basically, here's the quote: we're going to get tired of our own BS. But as I turned around and I sandwiched that with what Abraham, or it's Esther Abraham Hicks, the message that she channels, it has been such a perfect sandwich of information, because yes, the shadow work is coming up, the tendency for perfectionism, to the point that I'm willing to overwork myself and end up having to lose momentum because I didn't balance myself. And in the long run, does that support my goals? Do I have healthy boundaries for myself?
Mhm.
Like, there was nobody else telling me I had to do this. I did it to myself. And on one hand, I could beat myself up and say, oh, you're your own worst enemy. But I like Esther Hicks' version of this story better. And that is that your inner being knows exactly what you want. Matter of fact, your inner being is already in the state of experiencing that which you already want, right? That which you say that you want now, your inner being is already experiencing. The goals that you have, your inner being already has on a vibrational level.
Mhm.
And so it's a matter of getting the physical being into alignment with that vibration, so that that thing can come into existence. And here is something that came and just jumped out, and I'm like, thank you, thank you, thank you for the lesson. And, Esther would say of my situation, that that thing that I assume was negative, such as me working so hard that I burnt myself out, that thing that I assumed was negative actually was that thing that my inner self, um, or that I vibrated with for the purpose of leveling up into and towards that thing that I'm going towards. So basically, moral of the story is, um, if I want to fill an arena of people to have a good time with and talk to and share with and teach and inspire 3 years from now, like that's one of my goals. Well, that's my goal. I have a year, a 2 year, and a 3 year business plan. And in 3 years, I'd like to see an arena of people that are just lit on fire for life. And so today, as I'm getting ready for my massage client this morning, and I was tired, I'm dragging. I was great all week long. Go, 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 go. And now I'm dragging. I have a big day today. We're recording. And I'm like, man, I don't feel 100% myself today. And I don't like when I don't feel 100%, especially when it's my fault. And then I heard something that Valerie Love said to me the other day, Reverend Valerie Love, ChristianWitch.com. She's a friend and also a mentor. And she said, you have to wake up every day as if you're already there, as if you're already in that place, right? So if today the universe dropped a full arena of people for me to share with, would I have had the stamina to be able to show up to that thing that I'm saying I want? But yet my actions, the perfectionism, the things that I've done, if that was the case, would have actually sabotaged the success of that thing. So I'm grateful for these lessons in these seasons, You know, showing up for our podcast is super, super important. But I'm sitting in my home, I'm wearing a comfortable shirt, and like, you know, we can do this kind of very flexibly. But I'm asking for something gargantuous, which also means that there's a lot more moving parts. There's a lot more people depending on me. There's a lot more people, there's a lot more pressure. So it's important for me to understand that my boundaries within myself need to be honored when it comes to knowing my limitations, my physical limitations, and knowing, you know, how to leverage and to honor myself, and uh, just appreciate where I'm at, not, you know, not work too hard to try to make things happen. But we have to live and learn. And we learn a lot of times where we're not practicing healthy boundaries because we get into experiences that don't physically feel delightful. And when we're not feeling delightful, we don't like that. So why don't we choose things that enable us to experience joy and delight? And as you have in our notes, belonging and connection, and let's choose those things. Let's think those things, and then we vibrate at the resonance of those things, which now means that we're also in alignment with those experiences because they're here. Now we're in alignment with them here. But also part of having boundaries is when knowing when a situation, or like you said before, your friends or certain people um, just aren't going to be good for your well-being today. It's
Mm-hmm.
ideal that we could get to a place where nobody can affect our energy, and we can master that, you
Mm-hmm.
know, if we want to. But there are starting points and there are seasons. Sometimes we might feel in a mastery of it, and other times we might just know ourselves and know that, no, I'd be way too influenced by their thoughts of me today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe I'm not
Yeah.
that mentally fortified today, and I have to know that. I have to know that maybe today my boundaries have to be this, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow they can be a little more flexible. But today, you know, I'm in touch with what's going on inside of me, and that's important too, to being able to establish healthy boundaries, is getting in touch with what's really going on the inside. And you can gauge that with your feelings. How do you feel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems as though this life is an opportunity to, I believe, learn how to renew our minds so that they align to our core selves that is a reflection of love.
Yes,
And
girl. Yes.
all the things that you said, I think, you know, these these ways of stepping deeper into what reflects that, like self-compassion, and what does purpose look like, what does belonging look like, what does connection look like, and how do they benefit us, and what manifests from actually choosing those things. Because if we are wired for love and that is the core essence of who we are, it seems as though the only byproduct that can come from that is living fully alive or fully in abundance. But you know, there's process and there's time and there's mystery and there's these windows of opportunity that you are able to experience that in emotion, you know. And sometimes we have these heightened emotions where our body is also releasing natural chemicals like oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, you know, and we're having this kind of euphoria in the physical as well as in the soul and in our spirit. And then there's some times where it's the dark night of the soul, and we are really just feeling it. Sometimes it feels like we're really working, you know, digging a new trench in our neural pathways, creating a new habit in how we think, and wanting to apply, um, you know, these new thoughts so that we can have new behavioral patterns. And, you know, I like going back to the core values that I was talking about with myself, and the boundaries, you know, with integrity, honor, and authenticity, just learning about how to have these things show up in my life, and especially in these times of the holidays when for some reason it feels like there can also be this added pressure. You might only see a family member once a year and you're like, I don't really want to see this other person because I've realized how much I was really impacted by them, and it doesn't make me feel really comfortable to be in that atmosphere. But yeah, you kind of want to see the other person. It's like, well, what if you choose to say, hey, like I can't show up at this event, but I would love to see you at another time. That's something that can be done, and you're supporting yourself and you're supporting that connection, and you're still able to, you know, I would say honor your process and what that looks like for you. Um, I think, the first for myself, looking at the word honor and looking at what honor means to me, honoring my own heart first is the only way that I know I can honor somebody else's heart. And uh, the phrase, I will do anything I can to protect this heart to heart connection, that really does come down to honesty. Am I going to be honest with myself? Am I going to maintain the honesty? Because I know there's a natural consequence when I don't, which is internal suffering or pain, or, like I shared before,
Yeah.
The potential of having to sit with those uncomfortable sensations, knowing what I've done, and then how am I going to help myself or honor myself from that space. I know last week you shared some different perspectives on your own core values, and you were just talking about some boundaries that kind of popped up with listening to these beautiful teachers that you've come in contact with. Do you feel like there's anything, I guess, specifically around the holidays that you kind of had this aha moment recently?
Aha, I'm having it right now.
I mean, hey.
On the spot.
If not, that's okay too.
It
You shared a lot of really like
what comes to
good stuff.
mind, the title, um finding joy and meaning through the holidays, and I always go back to our titles because I feel like
Hmm.
there's so much in there, like everything kind of comes out of it.
Yeah.
um and you wanted to focus on, which is great, um boundaries. And one of the things that really came to mind also with listening to these teachers was every time you're saying no to something, you're saying yes to something.
Hmm.
And and I got this immediate visual of yesterday when I was walking my dog, and she's very strong. She's not very big, but she's a little she's a small husky, and so she's a pull dog, and we're still training on the halter. And but she goes for my walks, and she's usually pretty simple, except for when there's other friends that she wants to play with, like a
I know that
lizard
one.
or a
Yeah.
squirrel. You do it. And so now this yesterday, I'm walking with her, and now I've got 2 bags of poop. Okay, and
That's impressive.
she's already pooped twice. I've got 2 bags of poop in one hand. I've got my phone and my armband that likes to slide down on this hand. I've got my, earbud cord dangling, and she's doing circles around me, and I'm trying to like not have poop issues because those little biodegradable bags are
Yeah.
thin. And so I'm like trying not to feel that poop near me, and I'm trying to just keep up with her little fun puppy self. And we get on this block, and there is this cutest little puppy. it looked like a little pit bull puppy that still had his little floppy ears and his tail. And he was adorable. And I wish we could be somewhere where there was a fence and they could play, but that wasn't the case. He was loose, no collar, no nothing.
Oh no.
Fortunately, yeah, we were on some back road, like we were on some quiet roads, and a lot of people around here, it's kind of country. So a lot of people around here, like their dogs will get out, they know how to get home, and people don't really worry about them unless it's like a main road. So this dog is just like hopping from house to house, and he sees us coming, and we're like a block away, and they caught eyes and they start doing their thing, and she's like pulling, and then like her pull will like catapult her over here, and my arm's like wah, and the poop's over here and my earbuds, and then the puppy runs that way and she's like wah, and I was like oh my god, and like she's literally like my arm, I thought my shoulder was gonna come out of the socket, and she was just going in all these different directions, and I couldn't make this dog go away. He wouldn't go away. And so I was like, come on, Kira, come on. And she just was not having it. And it was a fiasco. And I was like, will somebody please come get your puppy, And there was just no one in sight. So I'm walking, and finally I had to get my scary voice on. And I turned around and I looked at him, and I just was like, go home, and I felt so bad. Like nobody but I knew I had to scare him so he would stop, or I was never going to get home unpooped. So, and so I was screaming, no, I was like, go home. And then he would stop, and I could walk a distance, and then I would see him coming behind again, and then she'd see him, and I'm like, go home. And there were like 3 or 4 times that I had to say, no. And then I was listening to Esther Hicks, and when she came at some point later in the day, said, everything that you're saying no to, you're also saying yes to something else.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, that just like really hit home.
I feel like people are going to remember this moment.
Yeah.
That are listening to this.
Yeah. Listen, God gives me the gift of stories. And I know that's another reason why I know that we're going to have a good time in an arena full of people, because I love group energy, especially when you're kind of coming together with a similar, a similar goal. And I love telling stories and just amping people up. But
stories bypass the intellect. They reach into us, into our heart space, and they actually
like a
sit
song
in a different way, because we don't have to sit there and overanalyze things.
That
touches our hearts.
I like that part of me. So cool.
Yeah.
But that really was also, I think, an aspect of healthy boundaries and experiencing joy. Focusing on joy for a minute, experiencing joy specifically through the holidays. It may not be comfortable to have to say no, in a firm kind of way, because some people won't just take no for an answer at times. And so some of y'all might have to be firm, and it doesn't feel good if you're a gentle, kind, loving, soft person. It doesn't feel good. But it will ultimately feel good. And then you can actually create, the more that you say no to something, you're saying yes to that thing that really does align with what helps you to experience joy and happiness. And quite honestly, we can go through these times and find ourselves just miserable because we didn't say no when we were supposed, or say no, or let's rephrase that, we didn't say yes to the right things. We didn't say yes to the things that are in alignment with experiencing joy. And I think that it would be helpful for us and our listeners to define that. That's another thing. Like we were talking about the core values. Sometimes if you say to somebody, what are your core values? You're like, I don't know. Like I never wrote that down. I mean, if you ask somebody, well, what brings you joy? A lot of times people will say the obvious. Oh, my family, my children, God, especially church people, be like, Jesus, girl, Jesus is my everything. Jesus is Jesus is my joy. I don't need nothing else. And then you got some people that are like, I don't need no people. I don't need no nothing. I just got my Jesus. I mean, I have met people like that. Um, Nothing wrong with that. If that's the lifestyle that you've chosen and truly it is the path of joy for you, that's amazing. That's awesome. Hopefully you're not, hopefully it doesn't cause you uh, to be a mean person to other people. So as long as you can be a nice person and enjoy your um, that lane, cool. But knowing, what does bring me joy, and for a while I had a hard time knowing, and I think sometimes I still do have a hard time knowing because I know some of the big things that bring me joy that aren't practical for daily joy, right?
Mhm.
Like I there are things that are like I went to a karaoke place in Universal Studios, and oh my God, what a joyful time that was, right? But how do I have joy in the mundane of the holiday season, the day to day?
Mhm.
And I'm still working on that
Well,
because yeah, I'm still working on that.
I think like we have to define what joy is on an individual level because happiness and joy are different. Bliss is
Right.
different, and then are you experiencing like the chemicals in your body being released and
Mm-hmm.
you're just like under the influence of that, when I think of joy, I think it's just a natural byproduct of love that we can tap into at any time regardless of our
Ooh,
circumstances, and I think that also reflects upon
I like
the
that.
stories the stories that you shared. It's like when we're in these challenging situations, like when you were talking about the dog poop, and saying no, which actually opens up opportunity. It's like, well, man, what if you are making a turkey on Thanksgiving and I don't know, like just like the Christmas story, you open the door and, and the dogs from next door come in and they eat your turkey. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, what are you gonna do? Because getting angry isn't really gonna solve anything. You could always get angry if you really wanted to, or you could potentially laugh and find joy if you wanted to too. I think like I've been sitting with a lot of uh, these conversations that you and I have been having for our podcast, and
Me too. I like listening to our podcast because
yeah,
when we're talking, we kind of forget what we say, so we go back and listen.
yeah.
But you were saying?
Oh no, I just it's bringing me into more of I guess a space where I get to marinate on this stuff in an intentional way. And like today, I was feeling a little overwhelmed this morning, and I caught myself, and I was like, okay, like what are some positives that I can actually see in this situation? And like as I started to look at the positives, the negatives became like farther and farther away from my view, and I was actually able to tap into some laughter because
That's it. That's
I
it.
started
What you
to
just said.
identify like there's really nothing I can do about this at all, and I made this choice knowing that I was taking a risk, and here I am, and I just have to trust this process and
Yes.
see like so basically my issue was I and I've never
Wait a
done
minute.
this before.
We lost you. You said basically
Okay,
my.
I'm
You
I'm
said.
ordering some
You,
products from overseas for my jewelry company,
oh yes.
and I've never done this before, and so there has been so many walls and just things that I never expected that I would have to deal with, and I became really frustrated because being from the East Coast, like
Get stuff
people,
like that.
yeah, you can get things done pretty quick, and customer service is different. And so, I mean, living in New Mexico, it does feel like a lot of times how things probably were 30, 40, 50 years ago. But I guess that's been preparing me for this experience. But anyway, so it's been humbling. And for myself, what I have personally found is, how do I rest in love, knowing that love is working all things out for my good? And that's what's brought me peace. And it's been a source of hope and joy that I can go back to. Just that little phrase, which is a deep rooted truth for me. So maybe there's a phrase that you can come up with, through
Or a
your,
story or a book.
yeah, through a story
Uh, gosh,
to help.
yeah, just I was thinking when you were talking about, resting in love and how it must be hard for some people to really wrap their head around the fact that they have an inner being that, that their inner being really loves them and likes them and
Yeah.
is supportive of them. And I would say, to the logical, analytical minded person who wants to feel those things and they're just frustrated because all these other tree huggers feel some kind of love on the inside, and they're over here like, I don't know what the heck this with. I had this, look, another story. I had this lady one time that she had some kind of 12-step program that she was running in her organization, and she had invited me there for an interview, just to come share with some of the women that wanted she's a sexual trauma nonprofit and does a lot for the community, and she's not Christian, and her but a lot of her clientele wanted some spiritual or Christian options within their, so I had gone for an interview, and when I got there she had a little genie from Aladdin on her desk, and she said, "That's my higher power." And she goes, "I don't know how to believe in God." She was Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
And so she just couldn't make a connection so she chose to be sober, and she couldn't make this connection with a higher power. Like she just couldn't figure out how to make that connection. So she picked this little genie, and she told the story kind of humorously. She's like, I had to be able to envision something because I couldn't, and so she's like, yeah, so I picked him, he's my higher power. But I think that analogy, not telling you to go get a genie. I mean, who cares if you do? If it helps you visualize if it helps you visualize that you have an inner being that loves
Mm-hmm.
you, and when you see the genie, it reminds you of that. But I think what might help to really bring that home for people is just try. Okay? Like, just start by like pretending that you believe it, right? And I know, fake it till you make it kind of thing, but here's the reason behind that. Because if you can generate the emotion around the possibility of that reality that there is a loving being within you, if you can generate the emotion, I lost you again. Where did you go? Can you hear
Here I
me?
am. Yeah.
Lost you. If you can generate the emotion that comes from thinking that there is an inner being within you that genuinely loves you, is for you, it's your inner self, it is your higher self, it is the self of you that is already in the fully manifested vibration of everything you ever hope to know, feel, be, experience. This being is there, and I'm telling you, I experience it. Danielle experiences this reality for ourselves, and it's helpful. But when you're coming from a place of like, I've not had any belief, I don't have any connection to God, I don't feel like I'm hurt, I don't know how to pray, whatever, if you can kind of allow yourself to be like a child and make believe, give yourself a make believe friend. And you know what? Spirituality is foolish sometimes, because it's not hard facts. It is it is the watery realm of the soul, and we feel and we intuitively tap into something that you can't necessarily measure in a natural way. So I would just encourage you, you don't have to tell nobody if you're too distinguished to let anybody know you have an imaginary friend who lives on the inside of your belly, but I would say just, just try to have an imaginary friend. You can laugh at yourself. You can tell yourself this is ridiculous. I don't hear anything. I don't feel anything. But practice. And the more you practice, you know, tossing the idea around that there is this perfect loving being that is also you inside of you. It is the God you. It is the divine you. It is the part of you that came here knowing what you came here to do. And it is the part of you that continues to pat you on the back and encourage you to get up and dust off your knees when you fall down and encourage yourself when you're beating yourself up. That's the part, right?
Mhm.
So use a little make believe until you start to really resonate with the idea that this could be real. And
Mhm.
you will know when it has become real for you when your thoughts start to connect, like you said, and like I said earlier, you know, there were these intersecting thoughts that literally came in and were like, wait a minute, would you talk to a friend like that? Maybe you heard it from a person once, but now that is there, and that message comes to you from the inner being to support you and tell you like, hey, you know what? You can choose to experience this moment very differently than you are right now. Let's do that.
Mhm.
Right? Let's do that. Let's choose to experience this moment very differently. Yesterday, last story I'll share, I was not only walking the dog, it was raining. Very, very. It was a mini hurricane. And so because we've been having, not literally, but literally, because we have been having mini hurricanes all week long, it's hard when you have a dog that won't go in the backyard and poop. So I have just had to accept that I'm going to put my sun hat on because it's big enough to, it's like a sombrero almost, but it's big enough to like cover the raindrops on my head. And I just accept the fact I'm going to get wet, and the dog's going to go through puddles, and the dog's going to take her time. She doesn't care about the rain. So she's going to take her sweet time finding some weird poop. And the rain's going to get heavier. My shoes are going to be soaking wet. And so I've got all those things to like, that could easily um, have me feeling like there was no joy in my experience. But I chose, because I'm practicing this. See, guys, this is a practice, okay? Your spiritual growth, your holistic health, this is something that we're practicing. Something else Abraham Hicks said, we got to go here in just a minute. Something else Esther Abraham Hicks said is that, and I wrote it down in my notes, something along these lines, not quoting exactly, but we are practicing calibrating to the frequency of our inner being. So, for example, if our inner being is a being of clarity, we have not been practicing clarity our whole lives, right? We've been practicing everything else but clarity. And so, as we have become aware that we are able to now calibrate to a being that exudes clarity, we can now practice calibrating into that. And so, what that looks like for me when I was walking the dog, instead of following my default mechanism to this really sucks, why is it got to be raining every time I have to go outside and walk the dog? Um, I now am practicing the art of calibrating to the inner self, which can truly find joy in almost everything. Almost, right? I mean, I'm far from that,
It's always a choice.
but that, yeah, but that is something that we can practice and master.
Mhm.
And so yeah, we want to practice um what was the word? We want to practice calibrating our frequency to the inner being, which is joyful through these holiday seasons. And we want to calibrate our energy to the inner being that already sits in the full manifestation of purpose and integrity and honor. And Yeah, and belonging. The inner being is never experiencing um, a sense of lack or devalue. So we're going to practice calibrating ourselves to these attributes of our inner being. And the more we practice calibrating ourselves to them, and since we're going into the holiday season, or we're full swing in the middle of holiday season, we get so many wonderful chances to practice this. And
Mhm.
I can't wait to hear from our friends and listeners of some of the practical ways in which they are practicing calibrating to the attributes and the frequency of their inner being. And if this podcast has sat with you today and been helpful for you in any way, please share your comments below. And also, you can reach us at Unraveled Together. Nope, that's my website. You can reach me at unraveledtogether.com, but you can reach us at meetinginthe.sacred.com. We really love to engage with you all, and also on Instagram, Meeting in the Sacred,
Mhm.
and Danielle's phenomenal coaching services and art can be found. You can actually just find Danielle at You Are Fully Alive on Instagram.
Mhm.
And I think I covered it all. Do you have any final thoughts to close us out
Yeah, I
today?
was just gonna share two quotes.
Thanks.
The most creative act you will ever undertake is the act of creating yourself. Deepak Chopra. And the best way to predict the future is to create it, by
Ooh.
Abraham Lincoln. And so I know we've shared a lot today and in our previous episode on core values and boundaries, but I just encourage you and invite you to sit with, how do you want to show up today in this moment, where you're going, and your dreams and your values. And even if you can only have one word or a phrase, that's okay and that's enough. And just hold that. You know, what does purpose look like for you? What does belonging look like to you? What does connection look like for you? Maybe these words are, you're hearing them for the first time and you don't even know what they mean or how to connect to them. And that's okay too. I've been there. I know Teresa's been there. We've all been there. We all hear these words for the first time at some time in our lives.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. But like Teresa said, we're excited to hear your journey and to be an inspiration as well as a support on your path. So blessings to you as you enter into the season, the holiday season, moving deeper and deeper into it and being able to connect deeper with yourself. Until next time, mahalo.
Mahalo.